Mic check, 1 2 1 2.
Can we get serious now?
One thing that did happen during the 60s was some music of an unusual or experimental nature did get recorded and did get released. Now look at who the executives were in those companies at those times. Not hip young guys. These were cigar-chomping old guys who looked at the product that came and said, I don't know. Who knows what it is? Record it, stick it out. If it sells, all right. We were better off with those guys than we are now with the supposedly hip young executives who are making the decisions of what people should see and hear in the marketplace.
Success in the music business begins with a dream, a vision. This podcast will give you, the listener, the insight and tools to turn that vision into a reality. Meet the industry professionals who work day by day behind the scenes, helping to make those dreams come true. Welcome to the business side of music.
This is Bob Bender in the studio with us today, Marcus Cobb, who is the CEO and co-founder of Jammber. It's a workflow and payment platform for the entertainment industry. He's designed finance technology for Fortune 50 companies and has also designed fashion featured in music videos for such acts as Pitbull, Baby Bash, Trey Songz, and others. An amateur songwriter and lifelong musician, he and his company Jammber have brought their passion for creatives to solve complicated legacy issues that have plagued the $2 trillion entertainment industry. He's a frequent speaker, writer, and advocate for creative rights. He currently resides between Chicago and here in Nashville, an avid reader with a penchant for solving complex problems, along with a martini drinker and a cigar aficionado. Marcus, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here.
How did you get Jammber started? Because I got online, I started looking at your website, and there's a lot of layers to it, both vertical and horizontal.
A lot of layers to it, yeah.
So where did the creation come from?
Well, it was very serendipitous. I mean, I actually ironically came in through the ideas, the initial seeds for Jammber came when I got into fashion. So I've been a musician my entire life in and around music, growing up singing, playing in the church kind of thing, and boy bands in high school in the 90s, that type of thing. But technology is really where I made my living. So I was fortunate enough to find coding early on and just fell in love with that passion and discovered startups. And next thing you know, my career just exploded. Got to work with some great companies and startups had some great exits. But I randomly just got burned out on tech. Long story short, was going to open up a fashion store at a time where it just wasn't good to open a fashion store. So my friends are like, you should just be a designer. Design instead. I'm like, I can't sew. I can't draw. Like, what are you guys talking about? And I like to say,
we're not going to see you on Project Runway anytime soon.
No. If it hadn't, I typically go through the back door. That's the only way they let me in. And this was a definite example of that. But it took off. I designed intimate apparel for women and evening wear and active wear just by putting a story together. And I found the beauty of fashion is that it changed my life, and that I thought I was a technologist and musician, but really I'd like to think that I'm a designer, an experienced designer. I love people. I love creating experiences that bring joy into their lives. And just technology, fashion, music are just different mediums for that. So in some ways it set me free.
Right.
But I got a call from a couple of friends at Bad Boy Records one day, and they were working with a really successful girl band that kind of fell apart, and asked us if we wanted to come put together a production deal and pitch it to Universal at that time. And it looked great on paper, and I joke all the time. I thought, how hard can it be to put together a girl band? And it was the hardest fucking thing I've ever done in my life. You can't manufacture chemistry. But the contrast that led to Jammber was I was successful in fashion because I was able to build teams around me who could bring those things to life. People who were great designers and great photographers and fantastic models and seamstresses. And so I could tell a story and they'd make it their own. And, next thing, this beautiful product would come to life. That's very difficult to do in music. So that frustration, trying to find, really talented female artists in at that time, a market as large as Chicago. 8 million people. I know there's talent. How come I can't find them?
Yeah.
We're on Reverb Nation. We're on Craigslist. We're doing showcases. We're all over the place, and we just can't find what we're looking for. And it was super frustrating after the success I experienced in fashion. And that's where it started. We really just wanted to build kind of a LinkedIn for the music industry to make that discovery portion easier. Fast forward, we got into Joe Galante's program here in Nashville, Tennessee, Project Music, which at that time, you've heard of Project Music. It was at that time, it was the first music technology accelerator in the world.
It really helped define some good startups in the music industry.
Absolutely.
What Joe Galante was doing, yeah.
Absolutely. He had a great team around him. Had them be sponsors from CMA, Universal Music, and then a lot of local managers who became investors in Jammber. So Maverick, Nashville, which is Clarence Spalding, Ken Leviton from Vector. It was a huge advantage in Nashville to be able to put our arms around the entire music industry in about a five square miles, right? To have that bird's eye view. So it was game changing for us.
Which is different than, and we've had this conversation many times on the show, the music scene, at least from an industry perspective, is a lot different here than it is, say, in LA or Chicago or New York, because I don't want to say it's compartmentalized, but it's a lot easier to find people and find places.
Yes.
We're almost 2 million people here in Nashville now.
That's right.
But everybody knows everybody, which is good. And the other thing is they're all willing to work together from what we're finding out.
That's correct.
And I think that's important.
There's different tempo to it. To your point, it's much more of a snow globe uphill in the music industry, right? The gatekeepers still do a great job of, there's a humility to creating music in Nashville. There is a sense of enough to go around, where in other markets it's kind of dog eat dog and we step on each other to get what we need to do. Nashville has done a fantastic job of resisting that. And so there's a different aspect of collaboration. You can get into any door in this city. Now, whether or not you get a deal, it depends on how much value you add.
And a lot of it is not so much who you know, but how good you are.
How good you are.
But the relationships still matter.
That's correct. You can walk into a cold door here. You can't do that in LA.
Right.
But you still have to bring value to the community as a whole. That's another gatekeeping aspect, and I mean that in a positive way about Nashville, is the people who are those mavens that we all tend to meet when you first come to Nashville, right? Mm-hmm. You'll meet them. Don't worry about their names. They'll find you. When we first come to Nashville, they have a way of sizing you up to see if you're going to add value to the community or take value away from it. And if they sense that you're adding value, they will roll out the red carpet for you and support any way they can. And that's what happened to us.
So Jammber was created when? How long has this been going?
So the idea for Jammber started cooking in the back of my mind back in 2013. That's when I incorporated. But we were just really flirting with the idea. We didn't know what it was, and definitely didn't know what it could be. That's changed.
You had I guess you had a cornerstone or a center point to start with,
right?
But you were still trying to figure out what it was going to be and how it was going to be.
Correct. Because in my world, my relationships had all been kind of on the major side, in and around A&R, music production, which is its own small little microcataclysm of what's all going on in the music industry, right? So I didn't know anything about the back office or A&R administration. I knew very little about song registration and where all that friction was, because it didn't matter. I was getting paid primarily in advances or front end and at back end payments. So a lot of the really messy red tape I never really saw or experienced. But that changed when we came to Nashville. They really, in Project Music, gave us this unfettered, uninhibited view of here's how it works and here's where it's broken. And we were so moved. I tell the story all the time. We were at a major record label and just seeing a bunch of payroll checks for session players. Nashville uses session players day in and day out,
right,
to create music here. And there was just this conference table of payroll checks returned to sender. And I remember asking the A&R administration woman who was advising us on why that was the case. And she said, well, it just takes us so long to get everybody paid. It can take us 3 months to 2 years to get people paid. And we're like, what the fuck? Like, why? Why does it take 2 years to get a paycheck?
Yeah.
And there were valid reasons as to why. The process hasn't changed in 100 years. You go to a studio, you fill out a time card. That time card goes to the union office. It goes back to the label. It's verified. And then after that, it goes to a third-party payroll company. That third-party payroll company prints your paychecks. There's no direct deposit in the music industry. Then that might go to your house or it might go to the union office. You pick it up. It's really easy to see why that would take so long.
And that's if they have your correct address.
And that's if you have, or if you don't write down your stage name, which is Buddy Blue. Blue, you can't cash a paycheck named Buddy Blue, right?
Yeah.
And if you haven't moved by then. And so if you had moved or the amount was wrong, your name was wrong, they just got returned to sender and that money was just sitting there. We talk all the time about the money that's maybe intentionally held, right, by bad actors in the system. But this is money that went out that's making a huge difference in people's payrolls and putting food on the table that's just being blocked by a broken
You have
process.
kind of a dollar amount of what that accumulates?
I would say just on that table alone, I probably saw $4 million in loan on that table.
Holy cow.
I would guess industry-wide, that kind of work for hire invoicing piece is probably about $2 billion annually in the States. And I would guess a good 30% of that is obstructed somehow.
We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to start digging into this a little bit and how Jammber can help resolve some of these issues that is out there.
That's the goal.
This is great. In the studio with us today, Marcus Cobb, who is the CEO and co-founder of Jammber.
Hi, this is Martina McBride, wishing you a very Merry Christmas.
You're listening to the business side of music.
Hi, this is Vinny Rebus, the founder of Indie Connect. Our goal is to ensure that you have the knowledge, the tools, skills, resources, and connections that you need to develop a profitable and long-lasting career in music. One way we do this is through these Business Side of Music podcasts. I'd also like to invite you to check out Indie Connect magazine, our free multimedia online publication packed with practical interviews and advice from music industry experts. Go to www.indieconnectmag.com. That's www.indieconnectmag.com. Let us walk with you and guide you every step of your musical journey.
You're listening to the business side of music.
Back in the studio, this is Bob Bender. We have Marcus Cobb, a co-founder and CEO of Jammber. I love your little subheading that I got on your bio. It says, "Make way for music."
Yeah, man. Yeah.
One of the things we talk about a lot on this show, obviously, we want to talk about not only music, but beyond the music, the business side of the music industry, because it's so complicated. And I think as an industry, we've created that complication, if that makes sense.
That's correct. It's born out of our history, especially American music industry. We're only 2 generations away from a music industry that was largely powered by the mafia, to be candid, and advertising and these different forces that weren't really artist-centric as much. There were certain schemes put in place to distribute money through organizations more than necessarily move a career forward. And unfortunately, some of that baggage made it into law and made it into best practices. And we've built businesses around some of those bad habits. And there's a bit of a reckoning coming where we're just revisiting, is this what's best for artists and songwriters in the industry at large, especially in the world of streaming where it just can't scale. So,
well, and I think the Music Modernization Act has helped. We've talked about that in the past.
Yeah.
That's still very much, even though it's passed and it's law, it's still very much an embryonic stage.
Still very fluid, yes.
Yeah. And then, when we talk about the technology of the industry, when I started working in the business, we were selling cassettes and we were selling vinyl, and then we transferred into, or maybe I should say, we morphed into CDs.
Yeah.
And, then that went to downloads, and then that went to streaming, and all of that.
Skipping mini disc and laser disc on the way, right? We just taste tested those.
Yeah, it's kind of like beta. We won't talk about that. But I was one of those guys that went out and bought the quadraphonic vinyl albums.
Oh, wow,
I had
man.
the quadraphonic sound system back in high school. But when you think about all of that technology accrued, that's only really in about the 50, 60 years or so.
Correct. And it's all fan engagement, right? It's all audiophile technology. So,
absolutely. Yeah. Jamber's a music technology company, but you're focused on streamlining and what we just talked about, that complicated process.
Yeah.
And you really have, and we talked about this before the show, you're not just one function. You've got 3 or 4, you got multiple layers.
Multiple layers, yeah. Because so, you understand this, I think, more than most. Your background, you've worked with artists, you've been behind the scenes, the label side. We talked about, you touched even in radio a bit. Art and business are so juxtaposed to each other in a way, but they're also dependent upon each other. Right? And,
absolutely.
And that balance has always been very, very difficult to streamline or to find even in music. Where do you put your time? Why is copyright law so complicated? And what would it be without that copyright law? While the MMA is not perfect, it's a huge step forward, but also is it a double-edged sword? And just asking these questions because it is intellectual property. There's ownership involved. There's royalties involved. But at the end of the day, we just want music and share that with our fans and friends and tell our stories, right?
And most artists really don't want to get that complicated anyway.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, there was a study. So at Jammber, we really tried to get into the psychology of, there's this blanket belief system that we had to challenge. And the belief system is, well, you can't get creatives to dot their I's and cross their T's and check the boxes.
Yeah, because it is left brain versus right brain.
Very much so. Yeah. And we had to ask, is that true? Is it really an administration issue, left brain, right brain, or is it a design issue? Creatives have higher working memory in general. So they have this superpower where they can hear a song for the first time, memorize that song, play from it, write a song for the first time, memorize it for their entire lives. Their brain is really focused, what's what I'm looking for, geared towards memory, working memory context, and storing that for long-term storage. But what's harder for them is context switching, right? Like going from creative mode to doing QuickBooks sounds horrible. Like their bodies reject that. Going from QuickBooks to scheduling, it's just horrible. But also it inhibits creativity. The more regimented some creatives are in their task, the harder it is to feel original in what they do. So they also subconsciously reject that.
Makes perfect sense.
It makes perfect sense when you look at it in that way. So how do you design experiences that don't feel so left brain? So the right brain's engaged, because we need to get that information from the studio. Like, who did you write that song with, and what day did you write it on, and what was the title of the song? We just need to know these things just to get you paid. I know a really large publisher here in town, and they have millions of dollars that they've not been able to collect just because they don't know who this hip hop artist wrote with. Right. Common issue. So our thing is, okay, can we solve that? Can we design better tools? And now we're at a point where we're seeing that after almost 200 iterations of these products, we're just now getting to a point where creators are adopting them in the way that we've dreamed for so far, and it's been a game changer.
Are you finding that the creative people out there, by using Jammber, it's an easy transition for them, or maybe an easier transition for them than doing it the old school way?
Has to be. Even the way we designed it was wrong at first. When we first built the platform, we leaned heavily on our experience writing software, right? And when we finished the first version, it felt very kind of Salesforce-y, business-y, Fortune 50. It was just the wrong approach. Now, granted, we built it for labels to start, so we thought we could get away with that.
Right.
But creatives just wouldn't engage with it, and it just felt bulky and learning curve, so we had to take a step back.
And that's where it all starts anyway.
Right.
Is with those individuals.
It all starts with them, and that's also unique to the music industry, if I can say that. In a lot of industries, if I'm selling software, I would sell it top down. I'm going to go to the CEO or CIO, and they're going to basically force an organization to take it over. The music industry is not that way, because the leverage is with the creatives.
Yeah.
Right? You're not going to force your top writers to do anything.
Because a record company is nothing. Radio station is nothing without that creative component.
That's right. All the value is outside of the organization as far as the productive value, right?
Is, right.
And that means the leverage is outside of the organization as well.
And we forget to think that way.
That's 100% true.
Yeah.
And if you, and granted, labels and publishers bring tremendous value between the pitching and the A&R and, when they're doing it right, the business management. So we're not taking anything away from that system, but the value, what keeps the machine moving is the creativity, the song, the experiences, and that's coming from outside of those four corporate walls. So when you look at that, adoption has to be kind of from the bottom up, those influencers. And that meant we had to design tools they want to use. Not only want to use, but want to show their friends.
Right.
And that was a paradigm shift for us.
Do you find that this is maybe developed more for the independent artist than it is for the label?
I think it is developed more for the independent artist, but in so doing, all artists. It's more for the individual creative than for the label. For example, we have one of our most requested apps was splits. Instead of having this huge platform on the web that everyone has to use, we decided to carve out simpler apps that specialize in a task.
And splits is what?
Splits is how do you get ownership details with the people you're writing with at the moment of creation without messing with the vibe of creating. Like, no one wants to bring out an Excel spreadsheet or a piece of paper and say, okay, everyone, now let's agree on what to, what our percentages should be. You wrote the hook, I wrote the verse. Now in Nashville, they solved that by just splitting it equally, right? So we actually borrowed from that, and there's a feature where you just click split equally and just move on. If you don't argue over the 5%, it's not going to be life-changing for you, right? Yeah. But it's just the ability, this app, you open it up and over Bluetooth, we can all agree to splits right then and there in the room. Just agree, split equally if you want to. But the cool part is that it shares all of our information, the things that the business side we know are important. Your publisher, your identifiers like your IPI, your the region you're from. And for the first time that I know of, that splits information is going in real time from the writer's room to the publishers and labels that need it to move money for the individual. And that's why it's a game changer. We can do the same thing for in-studio credits. When you walk into a studio, we can use Bluetooth and what we call geofencing to know where your studio is at and send your credits directly to the studio in real time. That's never been done before. But again, it did take us a few $1 million and hundreds of iterations to get to that point in time. Yeah. But that was the key, to your point, was putting it in their hands and making it super simple to use.
We got some more levels that I want to talk about. The Creator Suite.
Correct.
And then also Bridge.
Right. So look at it like a funnel, if you will. Creator Suite, those are the really cool, beautifully designed apps that go into the hands of the creatives. We have one, I kind of touched on splits. We have one called Muse, which is 9 out of 10 of the writers that I know capture ideas in voice memos. And they do their lyrics and notes. So we created a free app called Muse that does both. But again, it's metadata smart. So it knows the music business enough. It can work with splits. You can send that to a producer. That producer can top line, or you can top line for the producer. All your metadata is attached to it. So all your credits are with that Muse session for its life. It never forgets who you were. That's really, really powerful if you think about it. And then I touched briefly on InStudio, which just integrates in with Pro Tools and Logic and Ableton Live to sync directly with studios or other teams you're working with. That's Creator Suite. But all that metadata has to flow into the business. And that's where Bridge is at. Bridge is that. It's Bridge. Yeah, we really creative with the names, but Bridge is where the people who help you get paid can see all the information necessary to get you paid without even touching the creative process. And I think it's really powerful.
We're going to take another break, get a word in for another one of our sponsors. We're going to come back. I want people to be able to find out how to find Jammber and its costs involved and all of those good things. In the studio with us today, Marcus Cobb, co-founder and CEO of Jammber, with their line, Make Way for Music.
Hi, this is Jeff Carson, wishing you and yours a happy holiday season. And remember, please don't drink and drive.
You're listening to the business side of music.
Wow, I just joined the Music Starts Here community. This is a truly hidden gem for anyone in the music business. Whether you live in Nashville or anywhere else in the world, Music Starts Here is like a GPS for your music career. This is the place to be if you want to get advice and direction from some seriously talented musical people who have been where you want to go. Music news, events, and a great big community with resources for artists, songwriters, musicians, studio and tech, along with music business advice from pros in the industry, all on one site? Make sure you get your free profile now. Go to www.musicstartshere.org. That's musicstartshere.org.
You're listening to the business side of music.
Yep, we're back in the studio. Marcus Cobb, co-founder and CEO of Jammber. Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, man.
The technology, and we talk about that so much in this industry, is, we're all so app-based and platform-based. It's not like the old days. I remember when I first bought Pro Tools and I bought all of the percussive wave files
Yeah,
and everything
yeah,
that came along
yeah.
with it. You know, it was a stack of CDs.
That's right. It was.
know?
Yeah.
And now it's just
All
you
the
just,
BFD lights and all those. Yeah.
Yeah, and now you download it and plug it in, and
That's right.
That's it. How does Jammber work? Does that work kind of in the same concept? Is it an app or a online platform?
It's a platform. I mean, you touched on it. I won't go too deep on it, but in technology or experience design, there's this concept of transaction cost, and it's real simple, high level. Energy in our world has a way of finding the shortest distance between 2 points, right? Even though our television is only maybe 5 feet away from us, if that remote control is 2 inches away, it wins. We're not going to, for the fun of it, go change the channel because we're always conserving energy. And that's
our parents were smart because when I was a kid, my dad was, okay, go change the channel.
Right, it was still voice activated.
Yeah.
You were the original Alexa.
You just didn't have to put batteries in me, or maybe you did. I don't know.
Feed them. Yeah, I actually, to your point, I remember my mom making me get up and change the channel for her often. Sometimes just channel surfing for her.
Right. Yeah.
But the same difference, minimum friction. We have a way of avoiding friction as people, conserving energy. That's what Laws is about. I mean, that's what Uber is. All right. That's what happened with. That's why Napster existed at first. It was just minimum friction.
Yeah.
And that's why the iTunes became successful, because it was minimum friction in a legal way.
In a legal way.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Which is what most people wanted to do it legally. So understanding the nuance of that psychology, if you will, is a big part of product design for us, and we employ that. But it still comes down to just people.
Because once again, we've said this a few times already, you're dealing with creatives. Most of them don't have business degrees.
Yeah.
It can get real confusing out there. So you're trying to create something that basically can skim across without too many bumps or potholes.
Which is extremely difficult in this industry, right? I mean, we still have laws in place that make it difficult for us to register a song with your PRO without you signing in person on paper. So some of those laws are in conflict with how you might expect to do it here in whatever year it is, 2018. Right. The other part of it is we're lucky at Jammber in the sense that we really are standing on the shoulders of giants. We're not the first people to attempt this. We are.
You're not the first covered wagon to go across.
No, we're not.
Yeah.
There's no original ideas here. We have a unique skill set and design approach, but we learned too. There were lots of approaches since the 90s, if not sooner, that I know about. And what we did is became students of those approaches and why they failed. There was a famous approach where a label was trying to demand to get information on all the musicians that were at a studio session. So they built this platform, this piece of software. They gave it to the engineer and they said, you will fill this out or you will not get paid.
Yeah.
And not a single fucking engineer filled it out. Right, because the pace of the studio was more important to the engineer than their next paycheck.
Yeah,
and the beauty of a passion industry, the one that we're in. But make it simpler. What if it was transparent? What if you walked in and your phone could just check you in automatically? I would do that, right? What if maybe my audio jack had a fingerprint on it for me that was attached to my stems? That's pretty cool.
It is.
So those are the things that we're reimagining of making it as frictionless as possible. And it's not just us. The industry as a whole is changing pretty dramatically in that way.
Where do you see the future of this? You're already working on next generations of this? Is this a constant growing?
This is my
thing?
obsession, man. This is all I do.
Yeah.
First of all, I think the music industry is going to explode exponentially because just think about all the value we're losing on a daily basis because of our inefficiencies.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And not just value of music, but value of talent. I think, first of all, music is going to be just as ubiquitous as pictures. I think when people upload their pictures to Instagram, there are going to be widgets to let you add custom music to it. That you'll just be able to choose a color and an ambience and a vibe of the music, and it's going to create something that goes with your video of your kids running across the grass field.
Yeah, I just had someone tell me this a few weeks ago. There's an app out there, and I'm not going to butcher the name of it. But it's an ambient type app.
Yeah.
To where you can say, okay, I want to hear ocean waves, and now add a little bit of saxophone and some thunder, and it's music to set the mood.
Saxophone, thunder, and who owns that music?
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Maybe you own it, and then how do you get paid on it? What if it goes viral? Would you like to get paid on it? That'd be pretty cool. Get $5,000 for music you created with but that would be almost impossible today to do. So I think the industry is going that way, and I think Jammber's going to be a big part of it. That's what make way for music means. Make way for music is what happens if we remove all the red tape. If people get credit for the work they do in a way that changes their lives. If it happens faster, not 4 years, but 2 weeks, 2 months.
Oh, what a novel concept.
What happened? Right. Yeah. like every other industry in the world,
Yes.
What happens? I think a renaissance of music kicks in. A renaissance of music kicks in. I think that.
Well, you have to create some kind of stimulus. You're not being an independent artist or a songwriter creator.
That's right.
You do it because you love it and you're passionate.
That's right.
But it's nice to get paid for it.
You got to get paid.
And making a tenth of a cent for a stream, it isn't cutting it.
It's not cutting it. And fortunately, we're seeing, the Copyright Royalty Board, as you mentioned, with the MMA, they're revisiting some of those, which is so refreshing. But still, you need to, even if you're doing that right, you might not be getting paid.
You've got to protect yourself no matter what.
Yeah, where's your music? Is your music, or did you register your songs with your PRO? Do you even know what a PRO is?
Yeah, exactly.
Did you register your songs with Sound Exchange? Should you? Your producer? You shouldn't even have to think about that. It should be
What name did you use when you wrote it?
What name did you use?
Yeah.
Is it under your real name or is it under your artist name? Under, what language, again, is it in? Those are the kind of things that we're hoping at Jammber we can bring into this beautiful, automated, streamlined way that will change lives. I'll end it with this. For me, I actually, you and I were talking earlier, I've been around music my entire life. And one of my friends who I talk about often was an engineer, day in, day out, interning. Day in, day out, interning, second engineer, then first engineer. And all of a sudden, a big artist walks through the door and he gets to be first engineer on this project. And this project won a Grammy, went double platinum, to give you some scope. And his name was dropped from the credits because they spelled it wrong. This was a life-changing opportunity that this guy worked for. He paid his dues for upwards of 8 to 10 years. This guy paid his dues, and it disappeared. And I'd like to say, okay, that was an exception to the rule. I hear that story.
I don't think it is.
I hear it every day.
Yeah.
At least every week that story is happening to somebody, and they continue to go on. They don't even complain about it. They oh, that sucks, that hurts, but they keep going on. That's not acceptable though. That just can't stand. That won't do.
When you think about, album credits, a lot of people say, well, that's just kind of icing on the cake, or it's an ego check for you because you get to see your name in print. But it's also a way to validate what you've done.
That's bullshit. I would love for someone to tell me that it's icing on the cake, a way to validate for these artists.
Yeah.
No, it's their way of signing their artwork.
It is, exactly.
Right? It's their name on the canvas, and it's their right to be there. These aren't people who are. Most people who are on album credits have dedicated their lives to that craft. It's cost them dues to get there.
Well, and not only that, but it brings a sense of, I don't want to say legitimacy, but validation.
Validation. That will get you more work.
It
right?
really will. And 100%. It's something that NARIS recognizes.
Yeah, well said.
You want to start becoming a voting member. What projects have you worked on?
That's right.
Prove it.
Prove it.
Yeah.
Prove it. And that's the part that's hard to do today. I think between Jammber and these other great companies that are coming up and reinventing themselves, we're going to have more transparency and visibility. And I don't mean transparency is has a lot of baggage in it in our industry. I just mean more transparency when you want to be transparent about what you're working on. And if we can do that, if we can connect these dots and streamline the red tape and all the BS that's under that they shouldn't have to care about, I think it's going to change the world. And there are still other countries that have yet to even experience music in this kind of way. India is an emerging market that is exploding with custom music. Brazil exploding with custom music. And Brazil's going through a lot of pain right now. And they're capturing that pain in music in ways it's not going to come again from another generation. We need to let all this music kind of come into the world. And I think a lot, I could talk about this all day long, but discovery is kind of the final piece of that. Even as listeners, we went from an hour and a half of music to 2 hours, and now we're upwards almost 3 hours a day listening to music. Those credits of who played guitar, who was the producer, that can drive discovery. A lot of times we have an affinity to a producer, not necessarily the artist. We don't even know it.
Yeah. So when I was a kid, teenager listening to the Doobie Brothers and Ted Templeton was the producer, I found everything that Ted Templeton had done.
That's right. And that's how you discover more music, right?
Or who was the guitarist on this? Who was the bass player on this?
That's right.
And you find that a lot of times that tracks into other artists,
that's right,
other music that you're going to love.
And that's almost impossible to do today. One of the things we just, I'm happy to share, is we just struck a partnership with, we already had one with Nielsen where we're going to be able to share credits worldwide. If artists and performers choose for us to, that information is going to go directly into Billboard and directly into other charts. So we're going to be working on some of the first songwriter charts in the world together with Nielsen and Billboard as we get more coverage. It's about time. It's long overdue, but the data was hard to get.
Yeah.
Imagine the top charts for producers. Imagine who were the best fucking guitar players, as far as sales went. I would love to know. Those are some of the things that I daydream about every day, and I think we're making a difference.
A lot of people don't understand this, but there's managers out there for those guitar players. There's managers out there for those producers and engineers.
That's right.
And this makes sense. How can they find you, and what's the cost?
So this is another area where we learned a lot. I'm proud to say that the Creator Suite is free to start. And it's not only free, it's pretty impressively free. It comes with a lot of storage. You can share with your friends. We're in beta right now, so people can go to Jammber.com, Jammber.com, and it should be right there in their face to sign up for the beta. They'll get a link. They can even tell us what level of beta they want. Maybe they kind of want it really broken and they'll, break it more because they get a lot of pride out of that, or they want it working pretty well because they don't have time for, bumps in the road. We will meet them where they're at and deliver the software then. Bridge, which is this much more comprehensive project management platform, starts out at between $15 and $25 a month, which is
really about 3 or 4, coffees or lattes.
That's it. Yeah. And hopefully putting hundreds, if not thousands of dollars back in your pocket in the process. And we have an advisory board built up of Grammy-winning producers, musicians. If people are interested in that, they should reach out to me directly. I'm on Twitter at Jammber CEO, or also just hit me up, hello@Jammber.com.
Marcus, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you so much, man. I really appreciate being here.
This was great.
Yeah.
As a listener, you know that the Business Side of Music podcast is free. But in order to keep it running, consider becoming a patron of our show. You can do this by going to our Patreon page on our website, which is www.businesssideofmusic.com, and click on Support the Podcast button. When you become a patron of our podcast, you'll have access to material that you won't be hearing on our regular shows, insight from industry leaders that is designed for our patron members, and have the ability to purchase the Business Side of Music merchandise that you can find on our website at a discount.
The Business Side of Music is the creation of Tom Sabella and Tracy Snow and is produced by Bob Bender. Co-producer for the show is Vinny Rivas. The Business Side of Music is recorded at Music Dog Studios in Los Angeles, California and Nashville, Tennessee. Production sound design by Keith Stark. Voiceover and promo by Lisa Fuson.